So,
Hey guys, it's Robert Gardner with the Robert Gardner Wellness Podcast. Very happy to have Breanna Eckley. Did I say that correctly?
yep.
I ask everybody because I there's no standardization for name pronunciations. So Breanna Eckley, she is running, and I think this is the way I ran into you originally. You're running a home-based body workers group that I joined because I was interested in the conversations that were going on there. And I think that was primarily what we wanted to talk about. So thank you for coming on the program. You can find her website at breezebodywork.com just above, and then just below you can find it there on Facebook or in the group Home Based Body Workers on Facebook. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name's Breanna Eckley. You know, being a massage therapist is probably an accidental career choice for me. I fell into it just kind of as like a stepping stone to grad school, and then I'm still working towards grad school. And I just noticed that, there's a lot of massage therapists who want to work out of their home or want to spend more time in their home. And I wasn't finding a platform that specifically was designated to that. So I became the reluctant leader of this group. It's fairly new, and we already have over 200 and I want to say we have 270 members as of today. And I certainly want to see that grow so that we can share advice and tips and tricks on how to continue with our goals of just being at home more often in this new world. So thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. I have to drag people kicking, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna be on video," and I'm like, "Oh my
Oh,
god!"
yeah.
Like, just I
Well, I
just
will say I have a background in theater, so public
oh
speaking isn't exactly something that is new to me.
yeah.
Um, I sometimes wonder if massage therapists are, um, as a blanket statement, introverts, but you find a few of us who are not.
Yeah, there are certain categorizations I think we could make about therapists, but I do think it draws like a pretty wide range of people into the
Mhm.
practice. Yeah. So
Yeah.
how did you get interested in home-based body work, and was it during or after COVID specifically that made you look at that?
No, actually. So I'm before we get really busy, I'm gonna go ahead and plug in my phone. Um,
Yeah,
I
we'll need
actually,
that.
yes, I purchased my home with the intent of having a business out of my home, having a private room where I can perform my services. And I live in a town where this happens a lot. People purchase a old home, they use the downstairs floor or a certain number of rooms for their business and live in the other section of the home. So I knew that this would be a successful business model for me. And having the zip code of a tourist area certainly wouldn't hurt in the beginning to get some income. Um, so, as so many of us massage therapists do, I had a little bit of a boundary violation in my home and decided it was time for me to open a shop. That shop didn't really turn out very successful, and I wasn't very happy with the financial rewards of having a shop. So I decided to get what they call a real job. That was 40 hours a week. And then I did massage therapy on the side until my shop contract was up, with my lease. And I moved back to my home. And I've been so happy that I did. It actually worked out in my benefit that I had it before COVID started. And I think a lot of massage therapists, this, I haven't seen data on this, but I assume that a lot of massage therapists have transitioned out of a commercial space to their home for the financial aspect of it. Um, However, I decided during COVID, you know, I'm working this full time job. It's killing me because everybody's stressed out. It was customer service in technology. And I was getting phone call after phone call of people who were looking for something to do. They wanted to relax. Massage therapy is a very comparatively safe practice to participate in when you're looking for something recreational to do, compared to, for example, going um, rafting around a bunch of strangers. So I was trying to make the decision, like, do I keep working two jobs and killing myself, or do I just transition? So I was noticing in a lot of the Facebook groups, hey, I'm thinking about working out of my home. What are the legalities? How do I set boundaries? How do I do this? How do I do that? And there wasn't a platform specifically for that. So I thought about it for a long time before I started a group, because I know that starting a Facebook group and running a Facebook group can be a lot of work. It can be a bit of drama.
A little, just a little.
Yeah. um, and with some of my future goals, I wasn't sure I wanted to commit the time that would go into it. But I knew that it just had to happen. So I'm at a point now where I want to make sure that I get as many people who need that platform connected with that platform, and then design a really great platform so that it can grow from there and people can get the information they need.
Yeah.
Succeed.
I'm a big proponent of massage therapists working for themselves. I started Massage Entrepreneurs years ago. There's 13,000 or so therapists in that group. And at that time, owned my own home that I had a studio out of. It was a converted 2-car garage. It was pretty big. I had classes out of it as well. And I was a big proponent of a home-based practice, just kind of doing my own thing as a man in the industry, not really cognizant in the same way that women would be about safety issues. I came to find out over time as I was promoting entrepreneurship for therapists that women in the industry had a very blanket, there was a pretty blanket, at least at that time, maybe it's shifted and changed over the years, but they had a generally like negative association to a home-based business. It was not received very favorably or positively. I could get a private message from someone who'd say, oh yeah, I have a home-based business, but it's kind of on the hush-hush or something. And I just never dealt with that. But I had a different set of parameters as a man in the industry, and I was promoting a sort of work that was close-on and mat-based. So everything I did was video. It was like, show people what you do, show people what you do. There was no nudity, and there was no necessity of privacy in the same way. So the parameters for my business were very different. One of the reasons I joined the group was because I wanted to see what therapists were dealing with in relation to a home-based business specifically. And I think that a lot of the public, if they would catch this podcast, I don't think they realize that individual states are making laws in regards to massage. So whether you can have a home-based practice is somewhat dependent upon the state and jurisdiction that you live in.
Yeah, and the number one question is legality. And the problem with me addressing that is that it's a bit of a gray area. And it's, I almost shudder to say that out loud in a media form, but the fact of the matter is I can drive to my next door neighbor's house, park my car, pull out my table, set up my table, leave my table there for 3 weeks, and I have no problem. However, because it's in my own home, I now have to have a zoning variance to work out of my home in my borough.
Yeah.
You may live in a borough or a district, or you may not even live in the United States, and you have a totally different set of laws. Some people have said, don't even bother because you're just setting yourself up for a huge expense that will never affect you. Some people have said, you don't want to make enemies with the borough. What if you need them someday? Some people have said, just make friends with your neighbors. So, it's for me to get legal advice. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I will never say like, this is what you should or shouldn't do. But yeah, I mean, legality is a totally important concern. Boundaries are a concern. I think one thing that we should think about, and we aren't as much, is liability.
Yeah.
And I actually had an interview with a friend of mine, sort of a family member, who has worked in insurance her entire life. So insurance is really a big thing to think about. I'm off on a tangent at this point, but there's a lot of concerns, and especially as women, that we have to think about. But one of the reasons I was so hush-hush about it for a long time is because I was not up to code according to my borough.
And if you dig, when you dig with code, it's not just our industry. You're like, a lot of stuff ain't up to code.
Yeah. But the longer I've been here, the more I've recognized that they were just making suggestions as opposed to, this is what you need before you can even be open to practice.
Yeah.
Once they started to recognize that really it's an individual appointment and I make sure that everyone's safe once they come in the home, it's a different animal than,
Yeah.
I'm opening the doors to anyone to walk in, like some of the shops, gift shops or whatever the case may be in town.
Yeah. It's interesting. So we had a home in Round Rock. I read like code, and the code in Round Rock at that time, Travis County is where I live now, which is in Austin. It's just south of where Round Rock was. But when we owned our home, it was an important thing. I had to know like what the legality was or zoning or whatever. And the zoning law in Round Rock was basically like, listen, do not operate a drive-through taco shop out of your home. And don't irritate your neighbors. It might as well have said that in legalese. And I went, okay, so the parameters, remember I said my work is clothes on and mat based, so the parameters are different. One, we had a corner lot, so you could park on both sides. The corner lot across the street was empty. So when I had a class, which only happened once every 3 or 4 months, there were 12 cars parked down the street along the road, but it doesn't bother any of the neighbors because these are empty lots. So right. I had to factor those things in. And then when it came to clients, are you ready? The sessions are 3 hours long. So the max would be I'd see 2 clients a day. If I had to, I'd just park my car along the driveway, meaning like on the street near the driveway. And the customer could pull up right into my driveway spot, essentially. So I told people it looked like I was a really good drug dealer. Someone came, showed up for 3 hours and left super relaxed. It never bothered anybody. We never had any challenges or problems with it at all. What I teach is particularly adapted for a home-based practice if a therapist wants to go that route.
Yeah, and I'm actually a Thai practitioner as well. And what's funny is, well, I'm not sure that that's exactly what you do, but it sounds very similar to it.
Yeah, similar enough.
I have training in very traditional Swedish modalities, deep tissue, which is a bit of a hot button word amongst our career, and therapeutic, Wozlowski method, neuromuscular, things that are just traditionally on the table. However, I have found like when someone actually schedules a Thai massage, once in a while, it's, going to be someone who's targeting a female. Yeah. And it's just because it's got that Oriental name.
Yep. And that's part of the reason I'm moving away from it. But yeah, I encountered the same thing with students and through their communications with me.
So we've had very serious conversations about like, this person stays clothed. I have no problem telling someone on the table, if you cross a boundary, I know the police's phone number by heart. They will be here within moments. We have a great relationship. You're going to keep your clothes on. We will not be touching anywhere that would be covered by a Speedo. And you can kind of sniff it out after a while. That's another reason I no longer take walk-ins. I once upon a time had my home address and walk-ins on all of my media. Not the case anymore. Like I'm by appointment only. And I think as a home-based body worker, it would be very difficult to have that walk-in sign open. For sure. And I just want to encourage people to do what they want to do. I have friends who very seriously never want to work for themselves because they'd rather have someone else take care of their insurance. They're ready to retire in a couple of years. Like there's no point in them putting all of that effort into investing and finding their own clientele. But if someone wants to spend more time at home or wants to practice within their home, that's what I created this group for.
Yeah, I generally, as an educator, I've been teaching Thai massage for 15 years, something like that. I'd have to sit down and look. I've been a massage therapist for 20. Good Lord, I feel old now. I'm dating myself pretty bad. 2002 is when I finished massage school. So I deal with jurisdiction because I teach and I travel, and each state has a different set of rules and laws and whatever. And I've generally gotten to a very comfortable, calm space of saying, listen, I am generally opposed to all regulation of massage. And people are like, oh my God, are you crazy? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Very logical, very rational. I'm using 4 cameras on the internet, disseminating information globally. And you guys keep passing more laws to make it more expensive for me to go to your state, to give CE credit in your state, to block me in a million different ways so that school owners maintain their property rights and control over a jurisdiction in an area. And they're like, wait, what? And I go, there are 50 sets of rules in the United States alone.
Yeah.
It gets very complex. They feel like, I think it's like, I mean, one, it's just my opinion. It's kind of like speeding laws. Do I think it should be illegal to speed? No, I don't think it should be any speed laws. And they're like, oh my God, that's crazy, that's insane. And I'm like, it's like, is it really protecting the public, or is it generating revenue for the state for tickets?
Most of the time, I can make opinions one way or the other.
Sure.
I think scope of practice is important so long as someone knows what they're doing. I've had plenty of massage therapists give me nutritional advice without knowing that I've taken a full-on nutrition course, and what they're telling me is to take some kind of protein powder and I'll lose weight.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't care if I'm 180 pounds overweight. Like, I didn't come here for you to tell me what kind of food to eat. But at the same time, someone like you, or I actually have a pretty close relationship with another bodywork practitioner who's trained in Russian martial arts. He has that same challenge. Like, scope of practice is not a thing in Russia,
Yeah.
So it's like, he went to do an event. He was hopping all over the table, having people stand up, having people bend, et cetera, et cetera. Another massage practitioner who's been doing this for 30 years came up to him and had a nice long chat with him about what he can and can't do. And he just walked away. He's not the type to fight, but he said, that person is dead to me. I never want to hear from him again.
Yeah.
Martial
arts.
Tricky.
Yeah, martial arts comes up all the time with another colleague of mine, and generally laws, they're like, well, it's to protect the public. The reason we have massage regulation is to protect the public. And I go, okay, cool, yeah. But
Yes.
It's like, there's no license, I don't think, to be like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor. Like, people are choking each other out. And it's like, I don't want to, and granted, I don't know a lot about martial arts or karate, taekwondo, sistema, like other, things or whatever. But like, people are kicking each other, like they're sparring and fighting, and it's just all this stuff. So it gets to this point where I would look at massage regulation and go, well, wait a second, like, why is I know somebody in New Jersey, and I think in New Jersey you can't have a home-based studio, I think. And I was like I would think about it and go, why is that? And it's like, wait a second, the massage regulation is trying to prevent prostitution. The reason they don't want a home-based studio is because they don't want it to be a brothel. And you're like, ooh, man. So, like, chiropractic isn't sexualized. Personal therapy or physical therapy isn't sexualized. Like, yoga isn't necessarily sexualized. But once with massage, once you have privacy and nudity, it's like, oh, this is going to lead to prostitution. We have to have like laws to protect the public against this. And I keep going, ooh, there's already laws against prostitution. Like, you get into a weird like feedback loop. And I just get the students to go, listen, just like you, do your thing. If the home-based studio doesn't work for you, don't do it for whatever reason. But if it does, it really reduces costs and allows you to spend more time with your family.
Yeah. Well, and I personally need to get myself out of the house to practice. My actual niche is going to adventure sports events, workplaces, and various like community events, although that doesn't make me much money. Um, that's my actual niche. I consider myself home based because that's where I keep my equipment. And if I meet someone at one of these events who wants a longer session, they come to my private studio at my home, or I go to them. I give them a discount to come to my private studio at my home because that's where my tools are. Like,
Yeah.
I can come to you and drag everything with me, or you can just come to the table that's already set up and everything that's with it. It's funny you mentioned New Jersey. I'm in Pennsylvania. Sexual
I went to
harassment.
school in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, which school?
Baltimore School of Massage. It's now closed. It was
Oh,
it
I've
was in
heard of it
York.
though. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in York
Yeah.
at the time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've heard of that school. So I actually, sexual harassment is pretty rampant, at least here. And I've noticed, like,
Ugh.
yes, when I
Yeah.
hire a male to do an event with me, typically they agree to what I pay them, or they negotiate higher. With women, it's like sometimes they say, "Oh, no, 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 I didn't do all that work," when I go to write the check at the end of the event. Um, there's also a big issue with human trafficking in this state because of
Yeah.
the Poconos, because we're right next to New York and Washington D.C. We're an easy trail to the west of this country where, it's all woods and you can't recognize where you are. I actually have had, when I went for my zoning variance, the neighbors to this side of me said, "What am I going to tell my grandson about having a massage therapist next door?" And then my neighbor to this side of me has made some sexual harassing remarks to me over the years. Um, it's a whole category on porn. Like, we're not getting away from this anytime soon.
Ooh, that's a rough conversation,
Yeah.
man.
But the problem is this: like, regulations to stop prostitution should exist. Regulations to, like, stop massage therapists from practicing, I absolutely think are a problem.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I wonder, why are we still accepting tips as massage therapists if we're part of the
Uh-oh.
healthcare program, you know?
Uh-oh.
So I, I have a lot of opinions. I've been talking to the USO LMT, the leader of that, Stephanie Rodriguez. She's been saying a lot of things that are really resonating with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me as an educator, and some people, again, I think I said it in a very mild-mannered way that I'm against massage regulation, but they're like, "I don't understand why." And I'm like, "Okay, so you're in Pennsylvania, correct?"
Mhm.
Okay. I went to school in Pennsylvania. When I went to school in Pennsylvania
Licensure.
did not have licensure.
Mm-mm.
I just made sure that I passed the laws and rules that I needed to come back to Louisiana, which I did, and then got my license in Louisiana. So right now, if I talk to you and we have this meeting and you're like, "Hey, can you come up here and teach a class?" And I go, "Okay, hold on. Does Pennsylvania accept NCBTMB credits?"
Yes.
Okay. Now, do I have to pass my class through the Pennsylvania board to be able to have them accept those credits?
So I'm actually getting into the realm of continuing education in Pennsylvania, and it's something that I'm almost nervous to say out loud, because here's how it works in Pennsylvania. It's not profitable for teachers if everybody knew this. You're supposed to take 24 hours of continuing education. At least 16 of those hours have to be in person.
Okay.
It has to include ethics and child abuse education, or mandated reporting education for child abuse. You get audited. The only time you have to worry about whether you actually took those classes or not is if you get audited. I have asked several students about this. I've asked other massage therapists about this. I can count on one hand how many people have been audited.
Yeah.
So, and they have 90 days to provide the paperwork if they don't have it immediately.
Yeah.
So
my question is, and again,
Yeah.
50 states, 50 set of rules. Can
Yeah.
I legally, right now, I have classes, I'm a nationally certified provider, I'm approved,
Right.
my classes are approved. Can I come into the geography of Pennsylvania and teach a class for CE credit? Just totally
As
fine.
as far as I'm aware, yes, you can.
Now,
However, I would not call myself an expert on
well,
that
and
anymore.
I would do the research because I have to do this 50 times over anytime somebody wants me
Yeah.
to come somewhere, and it slows down the whole business and makes it difficult, and it's like, okay, so to make it more fun, then I have to figure out, okay, so Pennsylvania would let me in. A group of 10 students say, hey, come to this facility, teach a class, we'll take the class. And the students go, can I get a session with you while you're here? And I say, absolutely not. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I don't have a massage license in Pennsylvania. And they're like, wait, what? And I go, me teaching a class is different than me giving you a session. Like,
Well, and I actually found like being able to teach continuing education was one of the easiest jobs I ever found.
yeah,
Easy sometimes is a bit of a curse word, but I'm currently teaching under a school and I just very recently got my national license. I just sent her my information. I said I've taught, I used to teach people who were training to become massage therapists. I taught at this school. Here's my bachelor's degree. Here's my experience. I'm looking to move forward. That was all the interview I needed.
yeah,
You know, it's actually surprising how, you won't get a second class if your first class is terrible,
yeah,
but it actually does not require as much credentialing as you might
sure.
expect it.
For me, if I can legally come in and teach a class, and you have to understand this legally, when I'm in class with those students, I put hands on them. I'm doing body work and technique to them in the class.
Mhm.
But I can't stay an extra 3 days and give the clients or give the students sessions
Private
because
sessions.
I don't have a license in Pennsylvania. And the students go, oh, I never thought about that. And I'm like, I have to deal with it 50 times over. The reason I keep going towards digital education and using 4 camera angles live through a keypad that I created, a camera switcher, is because I'm trying to teach the students online and they're pushing back like, no, but we want hands-on. And I'm like, pay me. They're like, oh, but your classes are expensive. And I go, quality costs. Like, you guys are supporting laws and rules and regulations through your fees that are blocking me giving you information less expensively. If I could just go to any state and never have any conversation about legality, I'd be like, oh, I can reduce class fees now.
Mhm.
Because I have to contact their state board, do research, read their state law, try to find out, okay, do they allow CE? It's like Florida, for instance. Florida now has CE broker. So I'm like, great. So now I have to run my shit not
Yeah,
only through the
Florida
nationals,
animal.
but now I got to run it through this other organization called CE broker. And CE broker is trying to get me to advertise my class. I'm like, good Lord, can't I just go direct to consumer? And they're like, nope. And I go, why? And fundamentally, there's people in the background going, well, but we have to protect the public. And I'm like,
Well, and I had a conversation with a girlfriend who, she was fascinated by one of the classes that I'm designing. Um, and she said, can you come over to my house and teach it? And at that point, I was only teaching under a school. And I said, well, what if I taught it for a reduced rate without CEs? You know, I have paid for many things without getting a piece of paper because to me, I hang on to them because I need credentials, but
yeah.
they're essentially like
And
my brain is worth more than those pieces of paper.
yeah, therapists on the whole, this has been my experience. If you don't offer therapists CE credit, they're not particularly interested in what you're teaching. They look at that CE credit itself as being like proof of the validity of whatever it is you're sharing. And I find that situation unfortunate, but there's not really anything I can do about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day, like this is something that kills me too. Like yoga which is something like what you do, and massage are not really that different. Yoga is almost like self-massage. And if I came to a yoga class and started to adjust people, technically I'm doing body work, but somebody might look at that and say, you're not massaging them.
Yeah, it's a core issue for me. I'm a yoga teacher as well. And a lot of my
Mhm.
stuff becomes, if you really go deep with me, it becomes like yoga therapy on steroids. So what happens is, and I've learned this, I can work on a mat. The massage therapist will be okay with, okay, all right, he's working on a mat. It's kind of weird. It doesn't use a table, but all right.
Mhm.
Once I take out too many yoga props, too many bolsters, too many blankets, pillows, and it looks like something like Shavasana with an assist or stretch, they're like, I don't understand. This looks like yoga. And I'm like, what is yoga? And they get very uncomfortable very fast when I start asking questions. Because I go, well, why can't I teach this to the yoga community? And they're like, but you're teaching them massage. And I'm like, what is massage?
Well, I mean, there's like the definition we're taught in school, but um, this is why I identify myself as a body worker more so than a massage therapist. I mean, my license is massage therapy.
Yeah.
And some people, their identity is their license. And
Yeah.
I'm a massage therapist, and that's their identity. But at the end of the day, if I start selling, my self-care tools, and I'm teaching people how to do the self-care, I'm still a body worker, but they're doing the physical body work. But the education I give them is just as important as the actual
Yeah,
doing activity.
Man, I've had so many issues over the years, and I could go into it in more detail, but I had a yoga facility in San Marcos. It's now since gone and defunct. San Marcos is like in between Austin and San Antonio.
Oh.
There's a little college town, great little college town. And this yoga teacher found me and wanted me to come in, and I did a Thai massage jam, and they're like, hey, can you teach a class? And I go, yeah, sure. Like, to who? And they're like, oh, just some of the yoga teachers here. And I go, yeah, if they're not getting CE credit, I can teach whoever if they want to learn a little bit. I can kind of customize a little bit more towards their yoga practice. And all these yoga teachers were like, oh my God, this is amazing. I want to do this. Can I do this? Can I do this legally? And I go, you might want to get a lawyer. And once I say that,
don't ever give people legal advice.
It shuts down.
Yeah.
So the thing is, they want me, much like the state does, to give them a permission slip.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, guys, listen, I'm a yoga teacher, but I'm also a massage therapist. So if I go over these two disciplines in various ways and mix and match and blend, I'm basically covered. For you as a yoga teacher, I don't know at what point it stops being yoga and starts being potential legal stuff. So I would just say that I can't give legal advice. I think you should probably get a lawyer to check in on that. The problem is it shuts down a completely new market for me in education and teaching. Remember I teach from 4 cameras on the internet? I have global distribution. There's no geographic borders to the information flow that I'm giving across 4 camera angles. Mm-hmm. And I keep trying to get the therapists on board. And what happened in the past 4-ish years? So pre-COVID, stretch lab, stretch zone. And I was like, oh, what's this? And it's like, oh, it's stretch therapy. Well, isn't this nice? What is this? Wow, this looks a lot like what I teach. And they go, nope, no massage here, just stretch. And massage therapists started to complain and said, well, they don't have massage licenses. And I'm like, they're not doing massage, they're doing stretch therapy. And they went, this is bullshit, and I'm like, I have a lawyer, and my lawyer, who's a wonderful lawyer, I've had conversations with him that sound like episodes of Better Call Saul. And I go, Mr. Lawyer, Darren is his name. I go, I want to do this. He's like, you can't do that. It's illegal, but you could do this. I'm like, ugh. I'm like, I want to do this. He's like, you can't do that. It's illegal, but you could do this. And then I said the magic words. I said, what about teaching online? And he perked up and was like, online? He's like, don't teach them to break the law. Don't coach them to break the law. You can teach online globally with almost zero liability. And I went, oh shit, we have a major problem. I need to make more money and retain you, Mr. Lawyer, because we're going to have some issues. Because I was pushing towards digital at that time at a very basic level. Now it's like, yeah, I'm running 4 camera angles. Like, I literally talk to my students and go, listen, why don't I just stream to you 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and give you another 500 hours of footage every year? And they're like, wait, what? And I go, yeah, I'll just live stream every day over YouTube. And they're like, but I don't understand. We can't learn online. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't even know what to do at this point, because there's nothing about what I just said that's going away. But the students are so myopically focused on this brick and mortar methodology they learned in massage school around education that I'm like, you're not really looking at online education and the potential that it holds.
Yeah, and I I've been licensed for 7 years, but I would say that I've been a body worker most of my life due to my mother having had nursing training and et cetera, et cetera. When I got my license, I would wake up every morning and watch at least one video on technique. And I certainly learned quite a bit that way. Like,
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you're getting such pushback on that. You know,
Well, you have
I
to
don't know what to say.
understand it's very
Like,
it's very simple. It's common technology used in other industries. How do massage therapists right now, how do they feel about online education?
I will say in general, online education is not great. I will say in general, massage therapy education is not great. Having been someone who went to a very expensive bachelor's school, it's
And I here's what I did. I had taken a couple online classes and I was like, these online classes are horrible. And at that time, even for what I was teaching, I went, my understanding of the technology at that time, I was like, I don't think I can teach online. Like, how would I convey pressure? Like,
there has to be language to
it's a touch-based thing, right? And then over time, it slowly became like more and more video, one camera, a lavalier mic, and I was like, wait a second, can we do multiple cameras? And then all of a sudden, multiple cameras from a camera guy became, wait a second, if I can manually flip the cameras myself, I could run like 4 cameras at the same time from different angles and just flip camera angles without having a camera guy. So 5 years ago, I started a subscription. There's 800 hours of my classroom and private instruction online available for a whopping $7 a month.
Yeah.
And the students go, but we can't learn. And I'm like, no. You can learn online. You just have to put some work in. Like, when I talked about that live stream, it's like, listen, you guys can get together in groups. You can have study groups. Cincinnati. Group of therapists in Cincinnati can all get together. Are you ready? One person can sign up and just share the video with everybody else. And they all work together in a group, giving hands-on feedback while I'm leading. And they're like, wait, what? And I go, I can teach 10,000 people at once. I can't put 10,000 people in a room and teach a class, but I can do it online. But it's going to take years of me continuing to like work on that to get therapists to understand. I'm also not replacing core curriculum. They already have the basics. I'm just supplementing what they're already doing.
Yeah. I mean, there have been some online classes that have been god awful.
And all I did was I said, these classes sucked. And I was like, but wait a second, hold on. You just discredited all online education instead of saying, let's go make it better. And once I did this, it was like, people were like, oh, we can't, wait, hold on. And I'm like, dude, you let an anarchist free on the internet. It was amazing what I could do and come up with when I went, okay, just go direct to consumer and bypass state regulation and bypass schools and regulatory infrastructure and boards and just give people information. I did a private training yesterday, just like we're in Zoom right now. I'm using the same setup from 4 camera angles, having a conversation with Michelle Ratz McGuire. She is in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. She has never met me in person. She has never taken an in-person class with me, and her entire practice is essentially mat-based with suspension now. I'm doing that one-on-one. She's asking me a question, I show with my model. I'm like, oh, okay, switch this camera angle. Okay, right here. You're going to pull on this. You're going to access levator scapula. You're going to put pressure right here. And she's like, well, what if their, like neck is too... I'm like, okay, well, we can change the bolster size and reposition. I'm having interactive one-on-one classes online.
Mm-hmm.
And mostly across the industry, completely ignored.
Well, and I think as we get more into a digital age and, our old school massage therapists start to age out or choose retirement from this practice, like we're going to find more and more that technology will play a role in education. I mean, certainly, PowerPoints weren't a thing 20 years ago for massage therapy. I mean, they were in general, but they weren't necessarily for massage therapists. And now they're like almost, you can't go to a class without a projector in the room,
Yeah.
So what's going to happen in another 20 years when, the people in their 60s and 70s are now either, have passed away or are too arthritic to practice.
Yeah.
And we've got, the people in their 20s who've been raised with a phone in their hand. Like, I think that may change. I also think that, do you have to market it as a CE? I mean, how many coaching programs are out there at this point?
So the problem I've had, like, I can teach CE and do some online CE in the National Certification Board. If you don't give massage therapist CE, they don't think it has any value. If I try to flip the information to other communities, say personal trainers, yoga teachers, stuff like that, it's a little more difficult, and I find that they start to ask those weird legal questions. And I'm like, I'm just offering you information on the internet. And frankly, so far, that's not been a good enough answer. They want me to give them a permission slip. And they're like, well, wait a second. If all these stretch labs and stretch zones can do this, why can't you? And I go, that's a very good legal question.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't even recommend going to a lawyer. It's just like,
I prefer going to a lawyer to going to prison.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, personally, what I mean is, if I'm trying to understand the scope of practice, for example, in Pennsylvania, I can put a hot towel on someone's face, but as soon as I put something with any grit in it, then I'm doing a facial, So the question is, what can I advertise for and what can I actually do behind closed doors as far as like massaging someone's face? What kind of product can I put on their face? What kind of, et cetera, right? So I'll reach out to the board to see what they say. And then, I have a lawyer at this point who will say, that's not our scope of practice. I think I might be on a tangent here.
Oh, but this is normal for any conversation with me. Yeah, it's a normal conversation. Yeah. It gets exceedingly complex because, again, I'm dealing with state regulations across 50 states. The students want in-person classes, and I go, take out your credit card and pay me, and they're like, dude, it's expensive. And I'm like, my subscription service is $7 a month. How much did you spend on core curriculum in massage school? And they're like, well, it was 500 hours. It was $8,000. And I go, yeah. So for $7 a month, you can study with me. There's 800 hours of footage there right now. We add to that twice a month at this point. So you can study with me for 95 years for the same fee that you paid the school.
Yeah. Well, and here's a challenge I run into with like what you do. Really, all you need for body work is like muscles and the thing to do the work with. Like, it doesn't have to be hands. It doesn't have to be two people, like whatever. It's really just the client and the therapist, right? But if I go somewhere to do body work, I have to have my table and my chair because they just don't associate it. Like I have to have some way to say like, here I am, pay me to help you. And pretty much they sit on it. You know, it's just a place for them to sit, for me to put the cups and the gua sha and tell them to do their motions and everything else. Like, you know, that's part of the challenge too. Like, if I didn't have to drag those heavy pieces of equipment, that would be great. I can work on a mat on the floor. I can work without anything
Yeah.
besides that other person. But until they know what I do, I'm stuck with it. I'm stuck with dragging that heavy stuff and my ad,
Yeah,
my marketing.
the reason I'm such a proponent of social media and students taking out their phone, you know, I'm heavy on the social media marketing and telling them to use TikTok and other social media platforms. And they're like, aren't you afraid of people's judgment? And I'm like, no, man. I just assume most people hate me, and then when they don't, I'm surprised. Like, not
Yeah.
everybody wants to work with me, but the people that do love what I do. The business keeps growing. I help the clients out of pain. I help the students out of pain. I continue building online. I made workbooks and DVDs. I'm teaching from 4 cameras on the internet. I can stream globally live daily. This is not going away. I start talking about Oculus and 360 cameras, and they're like, what? And I'm like, oh, you think I'm not going to have a 3D classroom soon? You think I'm not going to be online where you can just come in with your Oculus and like look around the room and follow me? Like, are you serious? Like, this is not going away. I made a choice 5 years ago when I started the subscription based on the technology we had at the time. I wasn't doing multicam, it was just a single camera angle. And I went, why don't you just record the whole class and give them the footage? That worked famously. And here's the deal. It's not like people came in off the street to study with me. The students who had taken the class got access to the footage from their class. They were able to review. They were able to see their entire class in its entirety and review the entire thing. And then as you kept adding classes, they could see other people's classes, slightly different information. I could add more. I was working with Kristen Lumsden doing private trainings and recording those now from 4 camera angles, putting anatomy on screen. Like, I kept eating all of it, but the bigger conversation has been, and I think this is part of the issue, massage therapists don't esteem online education. There's no prestige. There's prestige in going to Hawaii for a week-long retreat.
Well, I have my own feelings about Hawaii in general, but anyway, like my feelings about having taught so many massage therapists in a realm that was very challenging. You know, I think the school was very predatory in their recruitment practices.
Oof.
Yeah. And I found that the massage therapists that I would work with, either in a spa or at that school, just were not very technologically savvy.
Yeah.
Excuse my phrasing. And that, you know, not everyone. Again, you can't use a blanket statement and you have to say not everyone. But like, I think part of it is like computers take you out of the room because you're connected to the world and they just want to be in a room with one person and do their thing, or
Sure.
with couples massage.
So
which that's a big one.
Yeah, let's narrow it down. So
yeah,
the private. So just take the Zoom, just our screens right here.
Yeah.
Not the anatomy. I mean, not the anatomy. Not the text or whatever. So I'm gonna use my controller and press a button, and I flip from the camera on the right, flip from the camera near the ceiling, flip at the camera from the low shot, flip to the camera with the close up. You ask me a question. I'm working on a model, and this is what's been so mind blowing. You'd bring in a problem client. I would talk to your client and go, Joyce, what do you have? And they're like, I got this thing in my shoulder, and Breanna hasn't been. I'm like, where in your shoulder? And then in 5 minutes, I've now helped you find that spot on the client where the pain was referring from. And the students who do this is one-on-one. This isn't a group class. They're like, oh my God, I didn't even have to go anywhere. And I go, the Airbnb wasn't expensive, was it? How much was the gas cost? How much was the travel fees? How much was the regulatory licensure? Like, all that's gone. This is direct to consumer. Now, expand that to working with 10,000 massage therapists across the United States at one time. But now they've got little groups. They're not like all communicating with me directly, other than maybe in like a chat box or something like that. But they're all able to work and get hands-on feedback as I continue to scale out what I'm doing. My goal is to really do both. I still do in-person classes, in-person sessions, but as I raise the class fees and session fees for my time, the students are starting to get frustrated because they're like, well, but studying with you in person is expensive. And I'm like, but you guys don't have any problem paying thousands of dollars to fly to Hawaii.
I do. I'm not taking classes on my vacation, but like, it becomes a business expense, and I think that's part of why they do it. I also think, like, I think about the phrases and the quotes. Like, since I come from a sales background, so many people say I'm just more effective person to person. I'm more effective face to face in sales. Well, how do you define effectiveness? Is it getting a yes every time you propose a sale? Then sure, you probably are more effective that way. Yeah. However, if you can send an email to 200 people and 10% of those people say yes to that email, then that email is probably more effective.
Yeah.
Because you get more sales from it. You know, and it's the same thing in these like digital classes. Like, I can help more people by creating a Facebook group, because, you know, realistically I can take about 12 clients a week. Yeah. Like, because I have other things going on. But I can help a lot of people help their clients by creating a Facebook group or doing videos like this. Like, and I think about the quote that Henry Ford made: if you would have asked people what they wanted when I created the car, it would have been a faster horse.
Yep. The thing is, it's not like what I'm doing teaching online. It's not designed to replace core curriculum or hands-on instruction. It's a supplement. Having a home-based studio doesn't replace, for a massage therapist, like working at a facility or massage facilities like Massage Envy. It's just adding diversity to the marketplace. I'm generally in favor of massage therapists making better choices for their lives, their families, their customers, and a private practice. As an entrepreneur, it allows the therapist the greatest degree of experimentation.
And it gives them the freedom. You know, if I got a massage and they didn't work my glutes, I would never go to them again. And that is like Massage Envy's like new thing, right? So it's like, yeah, I mean, you get the freedom to do, you know, creative freedom to solve the problems that you need to solve when you work from home.
Yeah.
As long as you remember that you're working with a client and that client has new issues every time.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone so far and looked at it. Like, we had a point where I went, if online stuff continued to grow, I thought about this. I'm like, could I just have a class or two a month at an in-person facility and just give it away to a select number of students? It's free. And they're like, wait, what? And I go, oh, well, my cameras will be there and I'll live stream it to 10,000 people who can pay for access online. But in fact, if you want to fly out from out of state, you can just take the class for free if you want to sign up for a spot. And they're like, wait, but how are you going to make money? And I'm like, 10,000 people are paying me $7. And they're like, wait, what? And I go, it's the internet. You should check it out sometime.
And there's also the benefit of, this is a career grower. The reason I got into Thai work in the first place is I wanted to learn party tricks. You know, I'm out in public and someone's like, my shoulder's really killing me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to get you on my table and start the whole process before I just grab your trap or grab your arm and shake it a little. I mean, Traeger's great for that kind of stuff too, because it's very show offy.
Yeah.
And then I hand them my card. Like, hey, if you felt good in these 5 seconds, like imagine what I could do with a whole hour.
Yeah.
And I think I love, like, Thai is such a career builder. Like, or just not working on a table, not doing your traditional start face up, start at the head.
I mean, I think Stretch Lab and Stretch Zone, they grabbed a huge section of that real estate that I've been begging massage therapists to take. And I don't know what's going to happen long term. Thai massage is certainly growing. Like, I'm rebranding to a new name because I was like, okay, hold on. If you're gonna put me in a closet and you're gonna box me in, it is gonna be a box and a closet that I design. Mm-hmm. Like, we ain't gonna just like, because once I get to a certain point, they're like, I don't understand. What is this, yoga? And I'm like, they're like, I don't understand. Is this Thai? And I'm like, and they're like, but what are you doing? And I'm like, adapting in a realm of impermanence. That was what the Buddha taught. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? I don't. And it's like, let me give it a new name. It's a next level pain relief session. Would you like to be a next level therapist? Would you like to deliver next level pain relief to your clients? And they're like, wait, what? And I go, just give it time. Just percolate. Just marinate on it a little while.
Instead of working the muscle in the same position for 45 minutes, why not look at that muscle as a dynamic, movable, which it is. That's exactly the point of it.
Yep.
Oh,
the students, man, the students are so wrapped up. They have a hard time with some of my original Thai massage materials because they think prone, supine, side lying, seated. And I go, what happens when you move the person around in 3 dimensions and just work on them from the space that's most physically advantageous to their issue in your body? And they're like,
my clients don't actually turn themselves over anymore. I do that for them in the body work. And I assume that's what you're supposed to do in Thai, but I was not specifically taught that.
Well, I mean, the thing is, part of the reason I'm rebranding is like traditional Thai massage teachers were like, what you're teaching isn't Thai. It's not culturally Thai. It's not theoretically Thai. And I go, I don't know how to tell you guys this, but this is a traditional discipline that you say goes back over 2,000 years. The Buddha didn't have antibiotics, bro. There's nothing traditional about surgeries and antibiotics. Like, do you think the Buddha is against? I'm like, oh, next. I'm like, so why can't we take this and study it and go, okay, now let's change it, adapt it, and make it better for Westerners and clients and help people in pain? And they're like, nope, you got to follow the tradition. And I'm like, I'm done.
Well, and the thing is, I studied abroad at a very young age in India, which is actually where Thai massage supposedly traditionally started. But the body work I would get there, very different than the body work we get here. And the yoga I did there was not a fitness routine. I'll tell you that much. Like,
yeah,
it's just a different animal. And when I get feedback from people, you can't do that. What are you doing? What kind of supplements are you on that you're lifting somebody's back off the table? Dude, our muscles are meant to move. Like, that's actually what they're supposed to do.
I mean, I'm not going to name names, but there was a local facility that hired me. And I tell people that I put out video as much as a warning as I do to like draw people in. So like, we can't work with this guy. He curses too much or whatever. And after the training was over, the students were all blown away. Just like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is revelatory. Oh my, I've never seen anything like this. They were totally blown away. Mm-hmm. A week later, I talked to my contact at the facility. He's like, hey man, we got a problem. The boss doesn't like it. And I go, what? He's like, the boss doesn't like it, man. And I go, hold on. Is it effective for you and easy for you to deliver? Absolutely. It's like, is it effective for the clients and helps them out of pain rapidly? And he's like, absolutely. I'm like, are you making more money for yourself and the facility owner? And are the people rebooking, you're making more in tips? He's like, yes. And I'm like, the problem isn't me, bro. The problem is that your boss wants something that's ineffective. He can teach that. You told me that I just created a goddamn Model T in a industry full of horse breeders. Who you think's gonna win? Good Lord.
The only thing I worry about, like with like stretch labs, and especially like around here, you don't need any kind of licensure for it. I just worry about injury. They sometimes don't pay attention to what they're doing,
Sure.
and then injury can happen.
Yeah. And they have liability to protect them from that. It's a large national chain, Stretch Lab, Stretch Zone. They've got their bases covered.
Yeah.
And then therapists now, this is hilarious. So the therapist wouldn't listen to me, wouldn't do time massage isn't my style. I've been told that before. And then Stretch Lab, Stretch Zone. And now massage therapists are like, well, I want a stretch routine. And I'm like, what the hell do you think I've been teaching for over 10 years? And they're like, nah, but time massage just isn't my style, Rob.
Well, and it can be a little bit different. Because I come from knowing that technique from, Southeast Asia, where it really, I mean, stretching certainly was a benefit of it, but it was more about, this is how we can compress the tissue. I don't know. I was going somewhere with that, but I don't particularly feel about that it's like stretching so much as it is like just dynamic body work.
Yeah, if people, I was a philosophy student. The problem is I can be agnostic about most things and just sit around and ask questions till people get annoyed, want to shiv me to death, because I'm just comfortable. They're like, well, what is massage? And I'm like, I don't know, never been able to figure it out. They're like,
yeah,
but I don't.
I would get a little frustrated with those philosophy classes because they felt very cyclical.
I love it. That's where I feel at home.
Well,
I'm like, when somebody
clearly, if you got
when somebody asks, oh, no, I dropped out. But anyway, so is it more? It goes around and then circles back around. I'm like, now we get there. Yeah, I turned all that philosophy and free thinking towards bodywork education once I got sick from that car accident. So I continue to work with students, but I try to I had to be careful about this. I use questions to try to push the student deeper into their question to refine it. And they get frustrated because they're like, would you just tell me what to do? And I'm like, oh, you want me to be a guru? Oh, you'd love me to be the teacher. Oh, young Padawan, yes. So take up your lightsaber. We're gonna have it shock you in the swamps of Dagobah.
Well, and I find when I was working in management and customer service, you get a much bigger buy-in if you ask questions to make them think about what they want to do. If you tell them what to do, they'll do it and then they'll forget what to do. If you ask questions to get them to think about what to do, then they will do it and they'll continue to do it and they'll think it's their idea.
It's a mix. I think as an educator, there's a piece of it that's marketing, and there's a piece of it that's education and social skills. And I take it very seriously and just continue to have those conversations to be able to streamline the curriculum so the students can pick it up and use it as effortlessly as possible. Yeah, it's weird. Austin is a 1.6 million population. We grow by about 100 people a day, I'm told, in population. And I have existed on the fringes of the society here for 15 years or however long I've lived here. And then even in the massage community, a pariah. Like I've heard stories where massage schools locally are like, don't listen to that guy, Robert Gardner. In other words, my teaching is starting to grow and it's starting to cause problems with core curriculum because they're like, he's teaching people to break the rules. But there's a difference. I'm not teaching them to break the law. I'm just destroying your culturally sanctioned ways of being.
Working towards the heart.
People will die.
That stuff you have to learn to pass I think the MBLEX is national pretty much now.
Yeah.
The stuff you have to learn to pass the MBLEX, and then the stuff you have to unlearn so that you can have effective body work. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. The clients, and I say this so often, The clients would always ask me, they just completely freak out after I give them a session and go, dude, why aren't massage therapists doing this? This shit is amazing. And I go, they keep telling me it's not massage. And they're like, what? Are you serious? But this is like way better. This is, oh my God, this is so much more effective. And I go, well, I teach from 4 camera angles on the internet. I'm trying to scale it as fast as I can.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to accept it. I mean, there was a long time where, I learned how to cup from my first boss, and then I learned YouTube videos, and somebody else said they took a class with a bunch of chiropractors and they are certified in cupping. But I know I'm more effective than they are because I've been doing it longer, but I don't have that piece of paper. I mean, this is related but not related. It's like it's just kind of funny, like the stuff you learn in school that you then have to unlearn.
Yep. And that's really, to me, that's the fun part and also the challenge of what I'm teaching, because I go, I know you learn this way, but why don't we put the effleurage and the table aside? Why don't let's try this thing on a mat? And they're like, oh my God, like what? And I'm like, it's a different foundation for the practice. The mat's a very different physical foundation. We're gonna make adequate use of our legs and feet and 2 more limbs now. Wait, what? They're like, but the place I work at wouldn't allow. And I'm like, I know. Not yet.
Well, there's no camera in there, so or hopefully.
Not yet. And I'm like, you think the next level pain relief studios aren't coming? You think I don't have plans? Are you serious? Are you sure? Sure about this? I'm super stubborn. I go, why don't you just start your own practice? And they're like, oh, but it's so much work. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like, it's just how it is.
The one thing that really like held me back is like, yes, I have a home-based practice. I don't advertise. Between you and me, the address that's on this website, I think it's up here,
Breeze
is
Body
not
Work.
my home address. It's pretty close to my home. That's actually my old storefront. And I keep it that way on purpose because I don't want just anybody just coming to my house, bugging my neighbors are trash, but still, I don't want them bugging my neighbors. But like, where was I going with this? Yeah, just being an entrepreneur and owning your own business. Like, one thing is like focusing on just making money for yourself can be a big challenge because I could work somewhere else and have a steady paycheck, period. Or I can work for myself and build a bigger paycheck over time.
Yeah. And
I think that's the scary part.
They think sometimes in massage entrepreneurs, I talk about this. I think working for somebody else can be a large part of the entrepreneurial journey. So you build revenue to have your own facility, to have your own website, stuff paid for, online scheduling software. So you do 10 hours a week at Envy or some facility, and then you're doing just 2 clients a week on your own. But you're now making twice as much for your time working on those 2 clients alone for that amount of allotted time. Now do that again and again and again, and then slowly reduce the hours and add until you do this completely. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, they think it's just like, just jump into the deep end of the pool. And I'm like, whoa, you got to pay bills.
And there's nothing wrong necessarily with someone getting into their own business right out of school, but I do actually encourage those people who are looking to own their own business successfully to work at as many places as they can as soon as they get out of school to learn what to do, what not to do, how to get clients, who has the best website, who has the best online scheduler, all of that other crap that you have to pay extra money for that you don't think about when you're in school.
Yeah. I learned tons from the facilities I worked at, and a lot I got fired from. I learned a lot about what I wanted to do or did not want to do based on the businesses I worked for over the years.
Yeah, same. And the people I worked with. It's tricky. It's interesting because, I haven't worked well for except for a small lapse in judgment as soon as I left my customer service job. I haven't worked at another facility in 5 years. So licensure in this state has only existed since 2011, which is not that long ago, you know? Um, so there was a variety of education levels when I started working in massage therapy. And a big part of that is like sanitation. And that's a big thing for me, especially with this disease
Yeah.
that's not leaving. So I was that blew my mind a little bit, some of the stuff I would see.
Yeah, I
But
thought I had seen it all, and then COVID dropped, and I went, "Ooh, no, 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 no! This is not where I wanted the business to go."
yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's some stuff that I haven't seen, but I saw some pretty weird stuff, including people I have a lot of respect for,
Yeah,
who just wanted to save money on laundry or wanted to save time, so they, stack 7 sheets on top of each other for the day. We're just taking the sheet off. We can just use the next one underneath it.
yeah. So I think we're getting up to our time. You got any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I know we went on a lot of tangents here, but I do want to see the home-based body workers group grow. I'm certainly looking for people who are willing to interview or people who are eager to make suggestions on what kind of content they want to see in that group. So feel free to join that on Facebook. I currently don't have any rules, but that will be changing soon. And if you have any questions, Facebook is probably the easiest way to reach me. Breanna Eckley is my name on Facebook. Just message me. You will see some of my personal politics if you add me, so I'll just warn you there. And I'm just happy to see this field growing. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah. So give me just 1 second while I shut this down, and
Sure.
then I'm not going to leave you immediately. I'm just going to stop the recording for the podcast. But
Okay.
thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much, Breanna. I said it correct again?
Yep, you got it.
I got it right. Cool. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, talking to me about that. If other stuff comes up in the future and you want to be on again, talk about more distinct topics, just let me know. You
Sure.
guys can find this on YouTube, whatever social media. You can find me on Anchor and whatever platforms you're using to Apple Podcasts, probably Spotify, to be able to listen to podcasts. But we'll talk to you guys soon. And thank you so much for tuning in to the Robert Gardner Wellness Podcast.